listening to Out in Santa Cruz. I'm Rob.
I'm Steph.
And we've got a great show for you tonight. Very excited. We have a special guest, Charlotte Laws, who is a California activist, and we'll tell you a little bit more about her in a minute. Also, catch next week's show with former Congressman Barney Frank, who will be joining us live on the air to talk about his new book.
For those people who don't know the specifics of this proposed initiative, first of all, to get an initiative, you just have to file papers and pay a $200 fee. And this particular one is called, again, the Sodomite Suppression Act. And again, Attorney Matthew McLaughlin filed on February 26th with the State Attorney General's office. The proposal prevents anyone who is a sodomite or who espouses sodomistic propaganda from holding public office in California. Those found guilty of spreading propaganda would be fined $1 million and face up to 10 years in prison and a lifetime ban from the state of California. It also calls for any person who willingly touches another person of the same gender for purposes of sexual gratification to be put to death by bullets to the head or by any other convenient method.
And so that means we would be doing this show from our prison cell, among other things. Well, actually, they'd shoot us first, but then we do it from our prison cell.
Right, and so a lot of people have been incredibly perplexed about how something this offensive could even make it to this level. And in all of the information coming from Kamala Harris's office and lawyers around the state, at this point, there's no way to stop it. Well, you have to take every one of these filings seriously, especially if people get the requisite amount of signatures. And then the State Attorney General office would have to write a title and a description about what this initiative
that actually
would be.
Comes first, and she has put in to the state courts an appeal for her not to have to do her job on this particular initiative. So that's a question. She probably will still have to do it. And so that's the way that is. What our friend who is going to come on now, in fact, I will go ahead and bring her on, even though we're running up towards our break. Good evening, Charlotte. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We wanted to bring you on because you were not going to sit still for this initiative and came up with one on your own.
I did.
And so we're go ahead and give us the name of that initiative.
It's called the Intolerant Jackass Act, and it basically means, it says that anyone who brings forth a ballot measure that suggests the killing of gays and or lesbians shall be required to attend sensitivity training and donate $5,000 to a pro-gay or a pro-lesbian organization.
So we're about up to our break right now. So when we come back, I want you to tell us a little bit about your inspiration for that, how you heard about the first act and how you came up with this.
Okay.
Okay, so you are listening to Out in Santa Cruz, KSCO AM 1080, Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey. And I'm Rob.
I'm Steph.
And we will be back after this message. Welcome back. You are listening to Out in Santa Cruz on KSCO AM 1080. I'm Rob.
I'm Steph.
And we are talking to Charlotte Laws, who is trying to create her own law, which is the Intolerant Jackass Act. Welcome back to the show, Charlotte.
Thanks.
So, can you tell us where were you when you first heard about the sodomite law that was proposed?
Well, I was in Los Angeles, and I read news on the internet, and I saw an article about it, and I was astonished. And we have a system, initiative system that's content neutral, so anyone can present a proposal, as you said earlier, for $200. And so I felt that it was important to respond to his proposal with my own and basically to mock him and to take away his power and marginalize him further and make him impotent. And also send a message to the rest of the country and the rest of the world that California is an open-minded place, which most people know. Obviously, we have San Francisco, and we have West Hollywood, and we have the entertainment industry, and this is just one small-minded guy in Orange County with, one opinion, and most of the state does not agree with him.
Right.
So I just thought that was really important. So that's why I wrote my measure, and I submitted it to the Attorney General's office, and it's on her website now.
I love that you did that, because it was reminiscent of an event that happened down in San Diego where some people from out of state, some men from out of state, were getting married by the Hotel del Coronado, and somebody from a nearby complex was shouting out anti-gay things and ruined or really disrupted their ceremony. And some like-minded Californians said, no, this is not going to fly on our watch. We do not want this attached to California. And they raised money and gave these guys a whole new ceremony. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I took your efforts sort of in that same spirit, which is really inspiring. Have you had any pushback on your submission?
Well, I had one death threat from somebody in the UK, well, at least that's purportedly, because it was an internet death threat. And then I've had maybe 2 people who attacked the measure, and everything else has been completely positive, to the point where there are quite a few people who would like to circulate the measure for signatures, which I don't plan to do, by the way. This was done to make a point, and it's obviously not constitutional, just like his isn't. So I'm not planning to circulate it. The Attorney General's office did phone me a couple days ago to let me know that she was going to the court to try to get it quashed, to get the gay killing measure quashed. And she wanted to know whether I wanted to continue with mine in light of that. And I said that I wanted to, because I don't know, first of all, whether hers, will go for it or not, whether it'll go for it or not. So if it does not, if the Kill the Gays measure does not go for it, then I will withdraw mine. That's my plan, because I don't want to waste taxpayer money, and I'm very cognizant of the fact that it can cost $5,000 to $8,000 if you bring a measure to fruition through the system.
Now, what will your reaction be if we find out that, in fact, this guy is more than just a one-guy type of deal, where we find out that there is some serious money behind this and that there's some real nefarious method behind it? Will you get more activists behind yours?
Well, I probably wouldn't withdraw mine, and obviously a lot of people would become more active with it, and so it would be something that wouldn't be just making a point. But, I'd be so surprised if that's the case. The first time I've heard that is when you just mentioned it. And just because it's California, if you're going to do something like, an anti-gay measure, you would have a lot more success in a different state. So it would really surprise me if there was a lot of money behind this. And also because the bill is so preposterous. I can't even imagine that anyone would think that you could get 50 signatures. I don't even see how you could even think that. And the way it's written, it sounds like something written during the Inquisition. Back in the 1600s, some religious leaders put this language together. It really would surprise me if there was anything more than one guy behind it. I originally thought he was trolling. I originally thought maybe this is not for real, but because of the proposal he submitted in 2004, I assume it is real.
Right.
And he also hasn't responded to the media. And one reporter told me a couple of days ago that his voicemail box was full. So he's certainly not doing this for press or for some other motive. So it's hard to comprehend exactly what's in his head or what has been in his head for the last month.
Well, the speculation I've heard, and there are people investigating this, is that because you have to intentionally become as invisible as he has become. It is not easy to be that untraceable online. That they're pretty certain he works for someone, and that and has been working for this entity for a while. And I've actually seen some speculation on who it is, and it's pretty scary actually. So we'll watch and see what comes out about that.
Wow. I still don't think it would get any momentum. I mean, even if it is an entity, it's just,
Right.
I just can't even fathom that, as I said, that they could even get 50 signatures. I'd be absolutely shocked if they did.
Yeah.
Well, and, unfortunately, we've been surprised by voters in California with Prop 8 and the passage of that. So I've been stunned. I mean, I could see potentially there are 365,880 quasi-marginalized people who would support it, but I'm hoping that that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it also, the thing I'm worried about is that if there is a serious push behind this, where they will actually have people on street corners blithely handing out these things on clipboards to people suggesting violence to gay people, and having almost legal protection in doing that, which that I think would be pretty disturbing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Charlotte, while we have you, because you've been really a touchpoint activist on a lot of different things in the past, and I wanted to see if you would tell us a little bit about that. You, for example, were, I think, an associate of Bill Cosby's and wrote a pretty large expose piece on Slate about that situation.
Mm-hmm. Essentially I was kind of a acquaintance, a friend, I've known him for about 35 years, and he did go out with one of my girlfriends when I lived in Las Vegas, and she introduced me to him in 1980, and I knew he was dating her, and then in 1981 she came to me and said that he had given her these 2 pills, and they had knocked her out, and he had had sex with her, and she just couldn't understand it because she had been consensually dating him for a number of years. And so it makes you wonder if he has somnophilia or some kind of attraction to a corpse-like body, because it was extremely odd that he would do this to her, a consenting partner who was extremely wild. I mean, she would have done anything that he asked her to do. If he had said, I want to have 5 girls in here for sex, she would have gone along with that. I mean, she was very, very wild at the time. Right. So it was hard for her to understand. She didn't feel that it was rape because she was already in a consensual relationship, but it was just something that was bizarre. But I didn't think anything of it at the time because I thought it was a one-off, and I thought maybe it was an accident, and maybe these pills, her body reacted in an odd way to them, and I had no idea that he was drugging other women. And until 2005, when other women came forward, and that's when I realized that Sandy had not been the only one.
Right.
And at that time, I had plans to go backstage with my family to see Bill after his show in Oakland, California. And I had stayed in touch with him over the years, so I'd seen him maybe a dozen times, here and there. And so I didn't know really what to do at that point, and I decided to keep the arrangements. And the first thing he said when I walked in the door is, did I ever drug you? So he was trying to diffuse the tension because that story was all over the media.
Right.
And so I didn't say anything, and we sat in the dressing room and had a nice conversation for about 45 minutes. And I felt like the reason why he had always spent so much time with me throughout the years was partly because he knew that I knew. And I felt like it was kind of like, trying to control the situation a little bit. And then recently, with Hannibal Rest coming out this past year, and more women coming forward, I mean, that's when I realized that for the first time that that I should have come forward, and that's when I did come forward and wrote this article, which was actually in Salon.
Oh, Salon. Sorry.
Yes, Salon. And so it's important to come forward, and I really should have come forward back in 2005, and it's important to support victims and say what you know and not sit on that information. And so that was a lesson I essentially learned and realized that I should have done that back, a decade ago.
Have you gotten some feedback on that article, especially since you have associates in common?
Well, I know his publicist really well, but I haven't talked to them since all of this happened. They're probably not very happy with me.
I was going to say, that's probably not a call they're going to pick up very readily. So, I haven't talked to Bill, obviously, since I came out with this information. The last time I saw him was actually in 2005, so it was a long time ago. And I haven't talked to anyone else who's worked for him. So, I can only assume he's not too pleased, but he's really been bombarded by so many direct victims. I'm a hearsay witness, really, is all I am. And my article was certainly not as, didn't hurt him as much as many of the other stories that have come out with actual victims who can say exactly what happened in their situation. Mine is just what Sandy told me and my experiences with Bill since 1980, essentially. Although I think it did give some color and environment to the situation that for people trying to make up their mind one way or the other, because everything is alleged at this point, that it certainly colored the picture for people not in the center of it.
Right. And, you learn tidbits about Bill in my article, the fact that he was trying to get Sandy to grow her hair long, basically, trying to bribe her to get long hair. And, you learn little information. He actually used to keep different rooms at the Hilton and have different women in each room, and he would visit these different women. And so, and I did meet several of his other post-Sandy girlfriends throughout the years. I met these other women that he was going out with. So the thing that I always thought was surprising is the fact that he dated, even though he was married, and that didn't come out. To me, that was the news back in the 80s. I didn't know that he was drugging these women, so I thought the fact that he was dating, I just couldn't believe the media had never come out with that information, because we had the National Enquirer and we had all these tabloids that were just on top of celebrity news and breaking information about tawdry, affairs and that kind of thing. And it just seemed like Bill Cosby was so protected. I was really amazed that nothing ever came out.
Now, Charlotte, where do you are such an activist? It's like you see something and you jump on it publicly, very forcefully. This is like your third time that you have really gone public and done something aggressive publicly. Where does that philosophy come from for you?
Well, I've kind of always had this soft spot for victims since I was a child, and I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and the main thing that I fought in childhood was racism. It was really bad in the 1960s and 1970s, and I was from upper class Atlanta, old money Atlanta, I guess you could say, and I was fighting everybody I knew pretty much, my family, my friends. It was really horrible, and I was an adopted child, so I never fit in Atlanta, and now I've met my birth parents, and I can see why I didn't fit in, because they're just like me. So my birth mother had been in the South for a very short time and said, I can't do this, I have to get out of here, just because the values clashed. My values were so different from theirs. And so I was constantly, fighting, for civil rights, and I was called names pretty much every day of my childhood, as far as I can recall, from some of my very closest friends. So it was kind of a constant battle, and I felt that prejudice was my mission, to stamp out prejudice and to fight prejudice in whatever form it might be. So that has kind of been a lifelong mission, and that's what I've devoted my time to.
And is this your first foray into LGBT advocacy, or have you done other LGBT advocacy work before this initiative?
I worked on AIDS Project Los Angeles around 1984 and 1985, and this is before anybody really knew hardly anything about AIDS. But the thing that annoyed me so much about the whole issue is that the gay community was being blamed for it, and it was all about targeting the gay community, and that pissed me off so much, because I'm not a person who normally goes out and fights against diseases. I'm not saying that's not a worthy thing to do, but that's just not my thing. My thing is fighting against prejudice. But because the AIDS was tied to the gay community, I became a volunteer of APLA, and I started, doing what I could to try to help that cause. I mean, that was kind of the first time I actively did it. Even though we had some gay people when I was a childhood in my school and my community, nobody came out. So I didn't know they were gay until 10 years ago when I was living in California. I know about 4 or 5 people who I did, went to school with me or lived in my neighborhood. One of them was one of my closest friends, but I didn't even know they were gay. They never said a word to me, and it was not a topic that was ever discussed in my childhood. The prejudice was always targeted at blacks when I was growing up. So it's not something that was really in my mind. Even though I do support gay rights, and I always have, it's not something that really was in my, it was just not in the forefront of my mind because it was never discussed.
Right, originally on your radar. So,
right.
It's funny because my activism also started APLA around the same time yours did. I'm wondering if we might have actually rubbed elbows down there in L.A.
Maybe.
At the time.
Did you do, there was we had a fundraiser, a big fundraiser at the Hollywood Bowl, and I remember that was one of our one of the big events, and I think that was probably 85, but I don't know if you were part of that.
I was down there. I didn't go to that event, but I was at the first AIDS walk down there, and when it was all starting and very, we thought it was going to end quickly. We were wrong. We are coming up against another break, and we will be right back in a few minutes. We're talking to Charlotte Laws, who has proposed the Intolerant Jackass Act, and you're listening out in Santa Cruz. I'm Rob.
I'm Steph.
And we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. You are listening to Out in Santa Cruz. I'm Rob.
I'm Steph.
And we have been talking to Charlotte Laws about the initiative she has placed or is placing on a future California ballot, or may potentially be placing. Before we get back to that, though, I think we have some news on the local PFLAG.
We do. We have a little PSA. As you know, Out in Santa Cruz is proud to support organizations in the county such as PFLAG, which is Parents, Families, Friends of Lesbian, Gays, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer, the whole alphabet, as well as Out in Our Faith, which we had a whole show about them last week. So we always bring you the information on the next upcoming PFLAG Santa Cruz County meeting. The next meeting is going to be Tuesday, April 14th. 2015 from 7 to 9 p.m., always at Peace United Church of Christ, 900 High Street in Santa Cruz. That's on the Upper West Side. And the topic is going to be creating families through local adoption and foster care. And they're going to be discussing adoption and foster care as a way to create warm and loving families in the LGBTQ community. There are amazing children of all ages here in Santa Cruz County waiting for a home to call their own. And the first hour, as always, is a time when everybody just kind of talks about what's on their mind if they have an issue or just coming together. And then the second hour will be a presentation from a representative from Santa Cruz County Family and Children's Services. And they'll also talk through the process involved in becoming a potential foster or adoptive parent. And if you want more information, visit pflagscc.org.
Good topic. Boy, I may go to that. That's near and dear to my heart.
Right, and they do this particular presentation about once a year because there's always new people interested in opening up their home, and so it's a great one to attend if you want to consider becoming a foster or adoptive parent.
Right. In fact, I did speak there on, I think, one of the last times they did that, so that is really cool. Charlotte, I wanted to ask you, as Steph was rambling off kind of the depths and breadths of our community, the initiative, the way that you have written, targets primarily gays and lesbians, not bisexual, transgender. Was that by intention?
Well, I was trying to follow the language of the attorney from Orange County. So he, as I recall, his measure specifically named gays and lesbians, and so I was addressing that. That was the reason.
That makes sense.
I was trying to reflect his language. I almost, initially I started at like A, B, C. I was kind of trying to respond to each entry that he had on his initiative.
It is ironic because in that discussion with people of that mindset, there is a complete erasure of the concept of bisexuality. It doesn't fit with the talking points as they have them, because that would acknowledge that there are people who have the capacity to be attracted in more than one way, as opposed to gay people and lesbians who pretty much are predominantly attracted one way, and then it goes into that whole choice thing and a lot of different conversations. But it's just interesting that I'm not sure if bisexuals were left out, that they don't get shot, or how does that work?
I find the whole concept of the initiative ridiculous on every level, but there are people responding to the fact that there's a framing in the culture of a conversation around marriage equality and about rights, equal rights, and the languaging is becoming gays and lesbians, and the bisexual and transgender, queer, etc. Portions of the community are by and large being left off and left out of the conversation. And it is, in this case, obviously, it's, we don't want anybody listed in this initiative. However,
Mr. McLaughlin, you left some people out.
Right.
What's the deal?
Right. However, there is a frustration just around the languaging, and it's that bi invisibility that we talked about, a couple of shows ago.
Right. Well, in this case, I don't want to speak for anybody of those cultures, but I would like to be left out. I wouldn't mind if he left me off this one, but
When I was drafting it, I originally had everybody included, but I realized that he didn't, and that's why I took it out. It's funny because it was originally in there, and I revised it.
This isn't the first time you've gone up against a form of hatred. What was your first fight in the hatred battle?
Well, about 3 years ago, I fought a man who's called the most hated man on the internet, Hunter Moore, who was the most notorious revenge porn website operator, who had an absolutely detestable site, and he was involved in a hacking scheme, and had hired a hacker and was posting photos that they were stealing from people's emails, putting nude pictures of individuals, regular people, on the website, along with their name, their city, their social media link, and then the followers of the site would harass the person, further humiliate them, pick apart their bodies, send the photos to their parents, to their employer, in an attempt to get them to kill themselves.
Oh my God.
I mean, it's just, revenge porn is just horrible. And
now, were there people behind when they called it revenge porn? Was there somebody who was pushing that a certain individual be targeted, and that was why it was revenge, or was it just simply this huge malicious effort to embarrass whoever they could grab photos of?
Well, yeah, it's whoever they could grab photos of in general, but it's the revenge porn. The term was invented by the media. And so when I first became involved in this, fighting this, the media was saying it's all about disgruntled ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends sometimes who are submitting these pictures and putting them online. And I realized that that's not necessarily the case, that when I did a survey of Hunter Moore's website, I found that 40% of the pictures were hacked. I found that 12% of the pictures were photoshopped. So in other words, you may never even have a nude picture anywhere, but someone would take a headshot of you, stick it with a porn star's body, put it online with your name, your employer, your parents' email address, all of your personally identifying information, and then attempt to drive you to suicide and ruin your life. So based on my survey, it was not all disgruntled exes, but the media liked the term revenge porn. I think cyber rape is a better description, because the victims tend to act like traditional rape victims. They go into the fetal position. They want to shut down their online presence. They want to lock out the world. They feel completely devastated and defeated. And it's very hard when you're a victim to fight against this. You need to have someone, a friend or a family member, who is willing to fight for you to try to get that material removed. And it's not easy to do. And luckily, we now have made a lot of progress on this issue, and we have 17 states that have enacted laws against revenge porn, including California. And Representative Jackie Speier of California is planning to introduce a federal law this year. And law enforcement is taking it seriously. I started an FBI investigation of Hunter Moore and his website. He was arrested a year ago. He recently pleaded guilty to hacking and identity theft. And he's going to prison for between 2 to 7 years. And we are going to be giving testimony. The victims will be giving testimony in June at the sentencing phase. We're still waiting to see what happens with the alleged hacker, Charlie Evans. Probably he's also going to do some kind of a plea deal, and we assume that will happen in the next month or two.
And it's true, Charlotte, that at the beginning, Hunter was really able to hide behind free speech, correct? And it was only the investigation into the hacking that actually was able to bring him to justice and get him to shut down, get him arrested and get him to shut down the site. Is that correct?
Right. He was hiding behind Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which basically says that website owners are platform providers and not content providers. So they're saying, oh, it's not our fault. People can submit anything and we don't have anything to do with that. So that's what website owners will often say. Now we have a law in California. So if he had been doing it now, he could be arrested for revenge porn. But back then, we didn't have a law in California. And so, yes, it was hacking is what he got arrested for. And that was the only thing they could get him for at that particular time. So, yeah, it was really an ordeal. I mean, I had death threats, I had computer viruses, I had a stalker at my house. It was really a nightmare because Hunter Moore was extremely powerful, and he had this cult going, essentially, and using Charles Manson language. He was the father, and they were his children, and it's the family, and his children would say, I will kill for you, Father, and he was like this leader that anyone would do anything for, and it was very frightening because I was going up against him, so his followers were not too pleased about that. And so I was getting the wrath of these followers and these are, anonymous people. I didn't know, are these people with guns? Are these people ex-felons? Are these innocuous people? I had no idea who my enemies were. So it was really a very frightening experience.
And was your activism in this a solo situation, or did you have a team of people and kind of an organization approaching it, or was it just you from your computer?
It was just me, and what happened, my daughter became a victim of this. That's how this happened and how I got involved in it. And she was hacked, and she had a topless picture. She had taken about 100 pictures in her room one day. One of them was topless. The others were just kind of cute, sexy pictures. She sent them all to her computer through her email, and 3 months later, she was hacked, and the topless picture was loaded onto Hunter Moore's website, along with her name and her Twitter account and her city. And she was absolutely devastated when she found out about it. I mean, she would never have sent that to anyone. And that's when she called and told me that she was on the site. And that's the first time I'd heard about revenge porn. And so I felt that it was very important, obviously, to get that picture down, because when you have a nude photo on the internet, it doesn't go away. It actually proliferates and goes from one site to 10 sites to 20 sites to 50 sites. And you have to literally spend the rest of your life making sure it doesn't reappear if you're lucky enough to get it off in the first place.
Right.
So it's a huge task. And I was doing it alone, and I was initially trying to make sure that Hunter didn't know who was going up against him, and I was successful at that for a while. He made threats against me. He's a scary figure, and I was very pleased that the FBI eventually did make the arrest. I think it was partly because by the time the FBI came to my house, I had a 12-inch file of victims and phone numbers and so much information. I found a lot of hacked victims all over the country, and I think they realized this is a big case. It's not just my daughter. There are a lot of people who are being victimized, and that's why they decided to take the case seriously. And they did an excellent job. I was very pleased with them.
So, Charlotte, very briefly before we go, let our audience know what's the best way to support Representative Jackie Speier and and groups going forward and trying to enact legislation? What can somebody do who's listening and wants to get involved?
Well, we do have, there are a group of us now. Initially when I started, it was just me against Senator Moore, but now we have an organization. You can go to endrevengeporn.org, which is our website, and cybercivilrights.org, which is the other website we have. And you can also just, she hasn't introduced it. Jackie Spears has not introduced it yet, but you could certainly contact her office and let her know that you are willing to help in any way you can, and you'll speak out and you'll do whatever's necessary to help her get that to pass.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing not only what you've done on this initiative, but your sort of activist philosophy. I love that you see an issue and you go after it, and that's very powerful, and I think we can enact a lot of change if more and more people were doing that. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
So appreciated. So next week we have
Barney Frank.
Barney Frank, the former congressman, is going to be talking with us about his book, creatively titled